and Hermetic magic features in the origins of the scientific revolution. Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton were all interested in alchemic ideas and Hermetic principles. The Royal Society features as ground zero for the birth of modern science. Virtually all Royal Society's founding members were Freemasons. One could reasonably argue that the Royal Society itself, at least in its inception, was a Masonic institution. One cannot be a Freemason if they're an atheist. They must believe in a god, a goddess, or some higher entity, because Freemason is part of the mystery religions. The people who laid the framework for science were religious. Remember how these occultists seek first the light, or to be given sight, which is of course what Helios is the god of. The ones who brought about the literal planetary revolution were all members of one of the largest and oldest secret societies in existence. This is not a coincidence, but proof of organized collusion in creating and maintaining this generational lie. The sun is revered in the world's religions, such as how the Druids celebrate the rebirth of the sun during the winter solstice.
So let's give a rousing cheer for the returning sun god. Yeah!
Astrology is the study of the movement and relative positions of celestial bodies, interpreted as having an influence on human affairs in the natural world. Egyptian astrology is very different than modern-day astrology. Each constellation represented a god. The first book of Enoch in chapter 8 tells us that the fallen angel Barakael is the one that taught men astrology, while Kokabel taught humans the constellations. The Kabbalistic tree of life is the knowledge of good and evil. Exoterically, each circle on the Kabbalistic tree of life constitutes an aspect of God, such as compassion, beauty, or discernment, while an 11th circle, shown with dotted lines usually, shows the place of knowledge. And all high-level occultists know this. Just like the light Luciferians teach the kingdom of God is literally within us, then the planets must be as well. Stellar worship is tied to the heliocentric religion. In my opinion, the idea of planets can be thought of as dimensional, not physical, and what we're taught as being physical, solid bodies, as the planets in the sky, the Bible calls the wandering stars, made of light and plasma. Interestingly, the Book of Enoch warns of the creation of the heliocentric religion. Chapter 80 says, "And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them." The lie of the heliocentric religion is right here. "And they shall be altered from all their ways. Yea, they shall err and take them to be gods, and evil shall be multiplied upon them." The planets are all named after gods. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible describes the earth as flat and stationary. In Joshua 10:12, Joshua asked God to make the sun and moon stand still, not the earth. He knew the earth was stationary. He needed more time to defeat the Amorites, described in Amos 2:9, as giants. Yet destroyed I the Amorites before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. The globe reduces us to a speck of dust in an infinite universe where we have no importance. The stationary plane reveals the unique creation of Yahweh. People reject inconvenient truth because it requires change. It's difficult to accept the reality of our world when we've been lied to since childhood. Just in your everyday life, begin to notice the symbolism around children. Like this Aleve commercial.
Everybody can be a winner like Aldi. Their products have won over 400 awards for quality. Kind of like Cooper's solar system. We do great too. Not Aldi great, but regular great.
What's great is this is ridiculous.
Even adults think wearing NASA clothing makes them look cool, hip, or smart.
Look at my pants with the eyes in your face. My legs are covered in outer space. Space pants.
Children do not question authority. Teachers in public schools must teach what they're instructed to, or risk losing their job, thus continuing the cycle of lies. When a trusted adult teaches a child a lie, they begin to build their worldview on top of it. The reason public schools teach what they do is because John D. Rockefeller Sr. started public education in the U.S. in 1907. But Rockefeller wasn't only interested in public schools. He funded universities, medical schools, and natural science schools too. People in denial of a world of universal despotism often ask, wouldn't everyone have to be in on it? Why would they lie? Why do adults lie to their children about Santa Claus? Because it's tradition. The purpose of tradition is to let every generation gain the same knowledge and experiences as the ones before it. A lie, agreed upon by a community, becomes a cage. The children who know Santa is not real become the outsiders, because the lie of Santa is agreed upon. Everyone participates, so things go smoothly. But if children knew that Santa did not exist, yet they still got the things that they asked for, maybe they would be more likely to respect their parents and be grateful for the things that they had. But even better, do away with the lie of Christmas and stop making innocent children celebrate pagan festivals like Saturnalia and Yule altogether. Without tradition, the power of the lie would die out. Another reason people like to keep these lies around is because it makes them feel good. And the way that they feel is more important than the truth. Global news, global warming, Golden Globes. The lies have been passed down for generations and have become accepted. But a lie doesn't become true just because a lot of people believe in it. Universal Pictures, owned by NBC Universal and Comcast, had a logo from the 1920s that shows a globe, which is about 40 years before we went to the moon, so to speak, and got the first, quote, picture from Apollo 11. But their logo has always been a sphere of some sort. However, the first version wasn't exactly meant to be Earth. You see, it's Saturn. The modern version still has the logo in the same placement as Saturn's rings, therefore this isn't exactly Earth, this is Saturn. And speaking of Apollo 11, here's a clip that shows how they came up with the first picture of Earth.
Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up, and you can see the real location of the camera, and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away?
Sorcery is the unnatural manipulation of forces that are unseen with a focus on mind control and the manipulation of the body's physiology. Groups that form the network or organizations practicing trauma-based mind control are the backbone of the corrupt world we live in, and it's interesting to note some of the centers that figure into this programming. Christian Fred Kleinik was national director of NASA during the moon flights when lots of mind control programming was going on. And it was being done by both the Masonic lodges and NASA. Kleinik was not only director of NASA, but the Secretary General of the Scottish Rite 33 Degrees of Freemasonry. I find this to be one of the biggest differences between globe believers and flat earth believers. Those who cannot accept that there might be powerful generational families who have maneuvered themselves into positions of power and are influencing the course of history throughout countless forms of manipulation, one of which is psychological. Most people are unaware of how powerful the establishment is. As long as they don't question their reality, they will never appreciate how limited their freedom of thought truly is. It's only when they try to go against the current that they find out how powerful the establishment can be. It sets up controlled opposition to the system, like the propaganda around the Flat Earth movement. Controlled opposition gives people a chance to vent their anger, but doesn't threaten their control. Because as long as it's us versus each other, instead of us versus them, their power is not threatened. Who would want to carry out mind control? One category are the groups that use the Kabbalah. This, and this are all based on the Kabbalah, and no, none of these organizations are separate. Groups like the Templars and the Freemasons practiced archaeoastronomy, or the ancient practice of aligning buildings with celestial bodies. The majority of groups that worship the sun, moon, or stars follow the Kabbalah. Esoterically, the creation of mind control zombies, called Golem, was the highest goal of the Kabbalah. Kabbalists are similar to Freemasons. They build mind control programs and are skilled in subliminal messaging and manifestation through subliminal symbols, phrases, or numbers. They use forms of numerology and geometry to construct their mind control spells. Kabbalists are usually trained in a form of astronomy and sometimes in demonology. Alchemy is about manipulating the physiology. They specialize in creating mental spells that trigger parts of the physiology. The influential occultist Paul Foster Case said, Every true magician knows that all his practice has a mathematical, geometrical basis. By the aid of occult geometry, he has traced nature to her concealed recesses. He uses geometrical formula and diagrams in his practical work. The people who founded the heliocentric religion were more than familiar with this type of work. Jesuits use destructive mind control. An example of a Jesuit spell would be, "You are worm food when you die," or "There is no afterlife. When you die, that's it." They create very sadistic and depraved psychological constructs intended to crush the spirit. A study of astronomers from the 16th through the 21st century shows that the leading astronomers were also Jesuit priests. Even the Gregorian calendar, the one we use today, was created by Jesuit astronomer Christopher Clavius. They will never see it as such, but cosmology was a religion created for and practiced by atheists. More often than not, those who defend the globe are those who have already had their spirits crushed.
And God's not real. When you die, you're dead.
An atheist is a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God, a creator, or a higher power. Why would an atheist believe in the Big Bang Theory but not believe in God? This person says, because the Big Bang Theory is backed by objective evidence and God is not. The belief in the Big Bang Theory is not the same as the belief in God. The former is a reasonable assumption until we find evidence for it to be wrong. The latter is blind faith.
Father George Lemaitre, who discovered the Big Bang Theory. And by the way, Nicholas Copernicus was a Catholic cleric. He had minor orders and was a canon lawyer. And of course, you know, the Pope Paul III was, you know, the person to whom Nicholas Copernicus dedicated his book on the heliocentric solar system. So the church was never against the heliocentric universe.
Atheists reject the spiritual domain. They believe the earth is governed by physical laws that came from nowhere for no reason. Therefore, no spiritual laws govern their behavior or morality either. Living in this kind of ignorance only leads the world towards more chaos. Evidence suggesting we are only material is very slim. Modern science, or exoteric scientism, does not have all the answers because true science has been occulted. The occult has many more answers and explanations than people might be aware of. For example, John Gittinger designed the occulted PAS, or Personality Assessment System. It's a method to evaluate human behavior and predict future behavior. The PAS is based on the ability to differentiate different types of people. Gittinger discovered that genetic-based differences exist in people, which is one of the bases for monarch programming. And this is why his work was not accepted by mainstream exoteric psychology. That information needed to remain occulted. Another example is when exoteric scientism tells you that memory loss is caused by dementia or concussions. They say things like that are evidence that memory is stored in the brain. I would argue that a broken cell phone isn't going to get a signal. When you use your phone and it picks up a signal, that does not mean that the signal is stored in the phone. It's just the hardware to access the frequencies. Like a computer, the internet is not contained within your laptop. Your laptop accesses the internet. The definition of exoteric: it is intended for or likely to be understood by the general public. Exo, external. Esoteric is intended or likely to be understood by a select few or an inside group, an inner circle. These two spheres of reality can apply to almost anything. Exoteric, esoteric. For example, Q gives a form of slightly esoteric information. And take religions. Religious dogmas, rituals, and symbolism is exoteric and designed to hold people back from an accurate picture of the religion they practice. To the outside, the exoteric adherents to the religion of Chaldaism, which is a monotheistic syncretic religion, whose name means highest power or highest lord.
The purpose of Chaldaism is to unite the traditions of all religions in the world.
Esoterically. Look familiar? Another way to explain the difference between exoteric and esoteric is, esoteric knowledge is people who know the truth. Exoteric knowledge is for people who are not important enough to know the truth. With increased knowledge comes increased power. Anyway, atheists. They have given their power over to their god, the state, on a fully exoteric level. Atheists are religious, and they worship wholeheartedly at the most dangerous religion on earth, the government. State-funded science is their god, and they will believe anything these people teach them who are agents of the occultists who own the governments. Atheism is and always has been a path to spiritual death, which is why the governments and Lucifer love when it infects the minds of the people, thus continuing the cycle that esoteric information is never to be shared with the masses. After all, How can you destroy an establishment by still supporting one of its pillars?